Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. And we got a show for you today. We've got Angela Levin talking to us about Prince Andrew. He's going to have to make an appearance in public with his daughter and his granddaughter. It's her christening. His ex-wife Fergie's going to be there as well. It's all going to be a bit embarrassing for the royal family. We'll find out what the latest is on that. We've got Jamie Jenkins, our favourite statistician, talking about the latest news from the Treasury and Richard III's office. Sorry, that would be Rachel Reeves. 1485. Is around about the time you'll get that through the show. It's almost 15 minutes in. But actually, 1485 is a bit of a ruse because that's exactly when the Battle of Bosworth Field happened. And we might even give you the name of her horse at some point, a kingdom for a horse. This is supposed to be an intro to the show, so I don't want to get too long. Huw Edwards, that failed, ghastly paedophile who used to read the news for the BBC. Is he plotting a comeback? He's put out a new picture of himself on social media. And finally, more of your NHS stories as well. Let's get it on. So, the big story of the weekend, the big royal story of the weekend, Harry and Meghan Meghan's father. Meghan's father currently in hospital in the Philippines. And of course, having just had an amputation performed, he's still not out of the woods. He's still in a very bad state of health. He's issued a plea to his daughter, who hasn't spoken to him for about 7 years, to please get in touch before he dies, because he doesn't want to die estranged. We're going to talk now to royal expert and Harry and Meghan expert, for want of a better description, the fantastic Angela Levin. Angela, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, as they say.
Isn't this the most horrific situation? You've got these two in California sort of mincing about doing with Love Meghan, talking about dressing Christmas trees and putting baubles on things around the house and being with your family at Christmas and doing all of the things that lovely people do, and they're not doing any of it.
No, I mean, but Megan's like that. I think she lives in another place somewhere in the world. It's just awful, isn't it? She's got no feeling for other people. She doesn't feel that actually her father is a very important part of her life. She doesn't feel, I don't think, that Harry's a very important part of her life. The whole part of her life is herself. So she doesn't do that. And the lies are terrible. And the feelings are just disgusting. I mean, it turns your stomach, doesn't it? I mean, I think even if she doesn't like her father, there are lots of photographs we've seen her when she was young, when she seemed to love him to pieces.
Mm.
But if she doesn't like him, it's not the point. He brought her up and he loves her. So if he's really ill, she should be going over there.
Mm.
Why can't she take a plane? The thing is about the plane is that she'll go and see any place where she's going to get an award, but she can't fly over there to be with her father.
Yeah.
Um, I think she's scared now. She's left it too late and she's scared. But she's got to do something. And I think the fact that she's not will make her even more unwanted
Mm.
by the people, the rest of the world.
Well, people were saying over the weekend that, not only is she not going to go, but she probably doesn't want to, ask for help because maybe she's too proud or whatever. But, she'd want to take a Netflix crew. She'd want to take makeup artists. She'd want to take, hangers on and advisors. So it would be like the whole sort of Meghan and Harry charabang, wouldn't it? It wouldn't just be, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to land in the Philippines and I'm going to go and see my dad on my own when nobody's going to know anything about it, because she can't do anything like that.
No, but she actually, I've heard a rumor that she would like to have do a sort of TV slot about getting back to her family,
Mm.
and that would include her father. But you see, she's not doing it as a person. He's not a person. It's another way of making a load of money,
Yeah.
and I think it just turns your stomach, doesn't it? It does mine anyway. I
Mm.
was furious with the whole thing. There's no compassion there. She
No.
talks all about being very careful with people and loving people, and she does none of that because she doesn't really know what it is.
Well, she just uses people, it seems to me. Even the people who appear on these
Yes.
shows that she does, they all seem to be kind of very transient friends. They're in one show and then you never see them again. They sort of disappear, having taken their paycheck, presumably.
I'm waiting for Harry to do that too because he's not really there, is he? He's there because he's useful, and that is all he wants. She, he had him very close to her for a while
Mm,
with her cooking, and then she didn't want him anywhere near her. But the numbers who were looking at her was absolutely going down the drain.
mm.
So she decided she needed Harry again. So she's kissing him and hugging him, but is not only allowed to speak like it seems 3 or 4 words. Mustn't say any more than that. It mustn't, it's not his, it's hers. But the public, the ridiculous public, she's thinking,
Mm.
doesn't want him. But they're
No.
the only reason they want to watch. A lot of people. He's the prince.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Netflix have more or less said that this is very much the last show. There's not going to be another one unless they can come up with a
Yes.
different format, a different show that she can do. Because I think nobody's buying this whole happy
No.
families thing. I mean, who knows if even their own family is particularly happy?
Yeah, well, she was working in a house which she pretends is hers, but it's not. She uses the things in the garden which she would suggest we all take from our garden,
Mm,
but she hasn't got that sort of a garden that she wants to take from her own house. I mean, nothing is really real. It's all
mm.
make believe, I think.
Yes, and that is the problem, isn't it? So, I mean, so what do they do for the next few days then? Because if she doesn't go to see her father, and he apparently still has a blood clot, I think, in his leg, and still is in need of some quite careful, medical care. He's still not out of danger yet, apparently. What
No.
will she do? You think?
Well, I think she just disappears, doesn't she? Whenever things are bad, she disappears and we don't see her because she's thinking of the next things she should do. And I think that is what it is. And she comes back, oh, I'm going to do X or Y. But I think Netflix is not interested in her anymore because she
No.
doesn't bring in the numbers in. But with her father, he's got one blood clot that's gone. Had his up, cut up to his knees, which is
Mm,
a terrible thing to do. But there is another one floating around which they're worrying about.
yeah.
Now, you can't imagine that someone over 81 is actually going to survive this. And the fact that he's still so ill, she should go. But I don't think she will. She wants nothing to do with him. I
Mm,
don't know why. I'd
yeah.
actually think in a nasty way. I shall tell you my nasty view. My nasty view is once he passes, she can then come up with all sorts of stories about him, of
Mm,
what he's done to her, which actually aren't true.
yeah.
But nobody can say they're not true or are true.
No.
I can't see why she couldn't just put herself to the side and go over and be polite, but she just won't. I mean,
No.
see her determination. I mean, she's been fighting the royal family all the time she's actually been here, and it's that incredible determination that she's got. She's still talking about the things she hated when she was there 6, 7 years ago. It's absolutely
Yeah.
astonishing that she doesn't move on. She's got all a nice place. She's got a husband who she's supposed to like, children, and all the rest of it. But she actually doesn't give in to anything. And she's still discussing how appalling the Queen was to her, how Harry was, William was hurt, and Catherine she doesn't like. She's still with it. Whereas actually, we all get
Mm,
bad times. And one thing is a very good thing to do is to move on, isn't it?
well, exactly.
Like you've done.
Exactly.
You
Well,
just
quite.
move on.
Exactly right. Because, again, with Harry, I don't know what his relationship is like with his father. I mean, as we're nearing the end of the year, let me ask you this question. Has his relationship with the king, Harry's relationship with the king, his father, improved, do you think? Is it better now than it was?
No, actually, it's worse. I mean, if his father, if the king saw this stupid thing he was doing with what's his name, Stephen Colbert,
Mm,
um, stomach would turn because anybody would think that what Harry was saying about Trump and how stupid he was and all that sort of stuff is actually also what the king feels because he's not actually a non-royal. So that's very difficult. And I think the king would say, what do I do with this person? And he also thinks, which is, I think, a very ridiculous way to behave, is that he thinks he's coming over to the UK and he rings up and says, "Right, I'll be there on Tuesday at 6:30." But you can't do that because there's lots of things that he's doing. He's got to have treatments and all sorts of things. He knows very well, I think, that his father is booked up all the time, so he has to wait. If he really wanted to get back on the right side of his father, he wouldn't actually be revolting after other things that he's doing, and he wouldn't start being so critical because it sort of stirs it round and round again and again. So I think for Christmas, it's not going to be on.
No, I think not. And let's finish up with speaking of Christmas and bad members of the family. Prince Andrew, who's not Prince Andrew anymore, of course, I have to call him Andrew now, don't I? Apparently, he's going to be reunited with his ex-wife Fergie because his granddaughter, Beatrice's daughter, I think, is about to be christened. So we're going to see him again in public.
Yes, I think there's been a lot of discussion about it because should he be seen, should he not? If you remember Beatrice's wedding, he was nowhere to be seen. They didn't want it all spoilt by him. Now, this with a little tiny baby, it's a very different thing, I think, because it's a very important. But I think it's been very difficult to know how to handle it. Awkward for the children, his children, I mean, and I don't know how you managed that. Perhaps he won't come out and be seen there. Perhaps he'll just stay in and be very quiet. But I don't think he will feel very bad about it because he's got another sort of I don't realise what this is all about, because he did come up when there was a funeral and chatting away and making a joke with
Yeah.
William, who was absolutely boiling.
Mm.
But it's not what you do at a
No.
funeral. And I think he can smile and laugh at a new baby's birth. It's lovely, but I don't think he understands that either. And as for Sarah, his ex-wife, um, the fact that she's leaving after all these years, I think it's about 28 years she's lived there with him, does mean something very strong because he's lent on her and she's looked after him and she's trying to boost him up. But I think now that she's deciding, she doesn't want anything more to do with him. So he'll be very alone.
Yes. It's
I
going to be
don't know
pretty.
what he'll do for Christmas, but he'll be
No.
very, very alone.
Well, presumably he won't be at Sandringham, will he?
No, they don't. They won't let him go there because they'll all go there and they don't want to see him. So he'll still be in Windsor.
Right. It's a shocking state of affairs, isn't it? It's not a very Merry Christmas for them all, is it?
Well, it seems to be crumbling, and I love the royal family, and I think it's terrible that there's such a burden on them
Mm.
of people's shocking behaviour and affecting them all. And the others are really trying to work hard, do good, help people, give, not take. And I think it's a very, very difficult time.
I think so. Angela, great to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining
Thank
us on the new
you.
Mike Graham show, and we'll see you again very soon.
I hope so. Bye.
Bye. Angela Levin there speaking about a miserable Christmas coming up for the royal family. It's not going to be great, is it? Unbelievable. How did they get this bad? All this week we've been talking about the NHS because obviously there's all manner of problems that factor in, particularly at this time of year. We've been talking about how your experiences have shaped what's happened to you. We've heard from you many, many stories, mostly bad, about how you've been treated, about delays, about why it's all nonsense to say that the government have actually somehow reduced waiting lists and given people more appointments. Nobody's really buying that. And so what I'm asking you to do is to continue to send in your stories. And if they are good stories, we'll by all means read them out. So please do keep sending them in and we'll be doing them every single day this week. This is from PW. He says, I had to go for surgery. I was on the gurney waiting to go in. Obviously, I was naked because I'm a man and waiting to go in. I was asked if I could be pregnant. Yeah, well, that's a bit stupid, isn't it? Lola says, my mother's neighbour's mother, who was about 87, was taken into the NHS with constipation on a Monday. I said to my mother she'll be killed off by Friday, and she was. Who dies of constipation in a so-called modern health system? Unbelievable. My dad's peg was leaking, says Mash. GP arranged for him to get it replaced at the hospital, and after a 3-hour wait and a GI doctor being called out from home to replace it, they said they didn't need a replacement peg. My dad got sent home again. The leak has now been repaired with electrical tape. Incredible. This from Malcolm. I took the wife to A&E recently. We saw 3 separate doctors being passed from one to the other. All 3 were foreign and of different nationalities. We had a difficult time understanding what they were saying, and they equally had a difficult time understanding us. And that is our NHS problem. Absolutely. Anthony says, after paying privately for a scan, we got an appointment for my wife's sciatica after 6 months, and it was cancelled the day before. 2 months later, haven't even got a replacement appointment. Old doctor has gone down to 3 days a week, and the new one is off with stress. Well, this happens a lot, doesn't it? I mean, this is the problem. I've spoken to many doctors who say that they only do 3 days a week now and the GP surgery, because basically they spend a 4th day and sometimes a 5th day either doing training or doing vaccinations or doing things which are outside of their general practice, because they say if they do more than 3 days a week, they get burned out. Which seems to be crazy, doesn't it? This one from T. My daughter's boyfriend has been ill for 2 months, several blood tests. After pushing hard, have come back positive for a potential pituitary tumour and an overlapping autoimmune disease. Bedridden a lot of the days at the age of just 31. We're told there's a 1-year waiting list to see a specialist. Incredibly ridiculous, isn't it? Just nonsense. We'll bring you more on the NHS. This one from Anthony. I attended A&E 7 times, no insight, then got a phone call and I was told I was terminal. They had a consultant meeting over the phone. My wife and children were in front of me in the living room. Unbelievable. And Highlander says, some of the NHS stories are heartbreaking, showing a profession that used to be the envy of the world. It's now become cold and callous, devoid of empathy and a basic level of care, destroying those dedicated to giving best care, leaving behind a shell of activism devoted to politics and ideology. And of course, that's exactly what the problem is, isn't it? Because now we know that on December the 17th, unless something changes, unless Wes Streeting comes up with a load more money, we've got junior doctors once again going out on strike for 7 days. From the 17th all the way through to the 22nd, which of course takes you right up to Christmas, which means that an awful lot of people who have got scheduled surgery won't be getting it done. An awful lot of cost will come into the picture as well, because the last time they went on strike, I think it was about between 100 and 300 million pounds that it cost, and 1.5 million patients were kind of displaced in the system. And then that means the backlog just gets even longer and longer. And it can't go on like this, because they've already had something like a 30% pay rise in the last 2 years, these junior doctors, and now they're asking for another 26%, which would mean literally more than a 50% pay rise in 2 years. It's absolutely criminal. Shocking. Something needs to be done about it, and this Labour government, I don't think, is capable of fixing it. Don't forget, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that will really help us with the numbers, and it will also help us get our names on the board and make sure that we become still and remain the fastest growing channel on the planet. You might remember last week, one of the main things we talked about was the state of our economy and the Office for Budget Responsibility. They, of course, lost famously their boss, because he took the fall for basically leaking the entire Rachel Reeves budget 41 minutes before she actually got up to say what it was in the House of Commons. She is no longer going to be investigated by the Financial Conduct Authority, because this government marks its own homework and they cover each other's backsides every single chance that they get. Keir Starmer is still hanging around, still pretending to be an international statesman, hosting Volodymyr Zelensky and other world leaders, right, to talk about Ukraine. But meanwhile, the economy is going from bad to worse. So we thought we'd better get an update on exactly what's going on inside the Treasury and exactly what the figures and the statistics are doing. So we're going to talk now to our favourite statistician. He is, of course, Jamie Jenkins down there in Welsh Wales. Jamie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see the show smashing all the records on YouTube. I think my YouTube's going to start working if you keep.
Listen, we're delighted. I mean, imagine getting 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I just want to say to everybody, actually, before we go on, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's called The Mike Graham Show, and like every single thing that you see there as well, because that will help us even more to grow quicker and quicker and faster and faster. Jamie, let's talk about the state of the economy, though, which is not growing. In fact, if anything, it's shrinking. It's doing the exact opposite of what we're doing here on YouTube. So what's the latest?
Yeah, so a hell of a state, I think, is the state of the economy, Mike, if you're kind of looking at it in the round. So what we've learned since I spoke with you last is kind of all unravelled, this whole OBR and what was going on. So quite a few numbers, so let's kind of just break it down. So basically, the whole budget that was presented, and we know it got leaked or kind of accidentally stuck online just before, which is why the OBR kind of heads quit now. So what we had was this mirage of lies leading up into the budget. So let's explain pretty much what was happening. So back in March, OBR did their forecast, and what they were looking at is by the end of the fiscal period that they're talking about, so 29-30, so 2029-2030, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves was looking to try and get a fiscal surplus. So what she was aiming to achieve is that the money they get in is going to be more than the money they spend overall. So they get a fiscal surplus. And it was around 9.910 billion quid, Mike. And then the OBR came up with this productivity downgrade, which Reeves was talking about and Keir Starmer's been talking about. So people are probably thinking, well, how do you just vanish money? So it's all based on forecasts, and the UK economy hasn't been kind of as productive as we thought it'd be. So they downgraded the production in the UK, and that wiped about £16 billion off. So on face value, if you were 10 billion above what at the end of the fiscal period and you've taken 16 billion off, it looks like you're going to be in a bit of a dire strait and you're going to need to do some more taxes. But what Reeves didn't tell us, Mike, is that because we've had high inflation, and we've talked about this in the past, and we've got this fiscal drag, so more and more people are getting higher wages and they get paid more tax. What happens then is that you get more money coming in. So we lost 16 billion quid from the productivity downgrade. They added a load of money on top of that, and then there were some spending things they didn't account for before. But what it meant was that they were taking £6 billion off that 10 billion surplus. So to cut a long story short, they were still going to be in surplus. So when she did that conference on November the 4th, she knew all this on October 1st, so Halloween. So she knew all about this on November the 4th. And then there was all this kind of talking around perhaps putting income tax up. And then the media said, oh, no, she's not going to do that now. So on November 13th, there was all the media talking about the income tax rise had been scrapped. And then the markets kind of got all this jitters. They're thinking, well, if we've got this black hole and the income tax isn't going up, how are we going to pay for it? So all the gilt yields started going up. So ultimately, Mike, the whole thing about we need to put up your taxes because of the productivity downgrade, she wasn't truthful. It was all built on lies. And what she's done, Mike, she's robbing the workers to pay for welfare. And it's just unacceptable.
Well, it is unacceptable. But also what's even more unacceptable to me is that, they suddenly blithely announced that the Office of Financial Conduct, or the Financial Conduct Authority, is not actually going to investigate her for telling those lies and for misleading not only the public but also the Parliament and also her own cabinet. And they just seem to keep kind of doing their own tidying up and sort of covering up, and they're not really taking responsibility for any of this.
No, they're just making up as they go along. I know the OBR chief left, ironically, Mike, or coincidentally, the day before the OBR were giving evidence to the Treasury Select Committee. So, was that, I think you need to go today before you throw me under the bus. That's Reeves, that is. The OBR boss throws you under the bus the following day in Parliament. So he was snuck out the door because of this leak. We talked about it.
And she, funnily enough, went and spent the day in Wales, didn't she, at that financial summit?
Yeah, she was down in South Wales talking about this financial summit. But Mike, total nonsense. I think Kemi Badenoch or somebody's come up and saying that if a CEO of a company had done something similar, and all the share prices, all the financial markets are all affected, they'd be out on their ear. So how can you continue? And it's not just Reeves, Mike. We're talking about Reeves here. What about Starmer? He's kind of doubled down, kind of back it and saying, oh yeah, the productivity down. He's been in Parliament and he hasn't been kind of truthful in terms of what he's doing. So
he's hanging off this whole idea that we're lifting all these kids out of poverty, right? I mean, I've never believed that there are children living in the kind of poverty that they describe, like some kind of Victorian nightmare where they haven't got enough food to eat. They're going to school having not had anything to eat at all because their parents have got nothing. I mean, people aren't living like that, and if they are living like that, they should have the kids taken off them.
Yeah, well, I grew up, Mike, on a council estate. I remember back in the day, my mum would have an electric token meter. It'd run out, and we'd have to go down. Things aren't like that now. And people talk about child poverty with people who've got Netflix subscriptions, got Sky subscription, all these TV subscriptions. There are going to be some children who are struggling, and that's where the government should be stepping in. But this lifting of the
they do, though. That's the point. I mean, it's not like anybody is so poor that they're not getting any benefits at all and they're having to go out and beg in the streets. I mean, that's not going on, is it?
No, and a lot of these children, Mike, would be getting free school meals when they go to school, so they're being fed in school, and the lifting of the two-child cap, this is why we've had this kind of lies in terms of why we need to raise your
Yeah,
taxes. That disproportionately goes towards kind of people who have larger families, and who have larger families, people who are migrating into the UK, who are
yeah,
not from outside of the European Union. They're coming in, not contributing net fiscally to the economy, so costs us even more.
yeah.
Absolute shambles, Mike.
And the stats on that are quite clear, aren't they? Because we know for sure exactly how many of those families are going to be in receipt of benefits, more benefits, because they've got more children.
Yeah, and why are British mums not having as many children? It's because they can't afford to buy a house because
Yeah,
of the shambles of the last 25, 30 years of both governments. We hear all the time, don't we? Housing targets, we're going to build more houses. Do they ever meet these targets, Mike? Like hell
no.
they do. Absolute shambles.
Well, that's the thing. And just talking about, Reeves not taking responsibility. I mean, another one we could mention before we move on to their latest kind of ruse, which is to try and get young people into work who are currently not working, is Angela Rayner. Because all you can read about at the moment is Angela Rayner preparing to be put back into the cabinet, or preparing to be put back perhaps even in charge of the party. There's a plot going on between her and Wes Streeting, which will apparently lead to her and Wes Streeting doing a deal a bit like Blair and Brown to take over from Starmer. And everyone's kind of forgotten about the council tax scandal, the home loan scandal, the trust fund scandal that she's been involved in, which meant that she had to resign as deputy prime minister, and yet they're already talking about bringing her back.
Oh, well, a week is a long time in politics, Mike. And obviously with the Labour Party, a day is a long time in politics. And if Rayner is the solution to all of our problems in the United Kingdom, God help us. The thing with politics, Mike, is how many of this Labour cabinet, Rayner included, if they went, if they put their CV in and went for an actual job on, say, a similar MP salary in a company, how many would even get to an SIF, let alone get to an interview? Because what
Oh, I know.
experience do they actually have to run the country? And
Yeah.
if he gets back in, Mike, well, I think pretty much we're doomed.
He might as well just shut the lights down and leave. Basically, I think, and go and head off to Anglesey or somewhere. Let's talk about this plan that they unveiled. Pat McFadden unveiled it on Sunday when he was doing the rounds on TV, basically talking about the numbers. I think it's 900 plus thousand young people who are not currently working and not currently in education, and they're trying to say that they're going to stimulate the workplace so that they can get back or get a job, which they at the moment haven't got. Some of them have never worked, right? But they're talking about funding sort of a few £100 million for about 50,000 of them. I mean, can they even do that? I mean, it's a promise rather than an actual a thing that they can say they're definitely doing, right?
Yeah, so break this down, Mike. What we've seen since the general election, so back last year, we've seen overall the number of people in work, the jobs across the economy, it's number 170,000. But younger people have been hit the hardest. So
Yeah.
if we look at, say, 16 to 34-year-olds, it's over 200,000. And then if we just look at, say, 16 to 24, I think this policy that they're talking about is for young people around 16 to 24. So we've lost 77,000 workers since the start of the election. So
Yeah.
you talk about they're going to invest some millions of pounds to actually try and get 50,000 people back into work. Well, you're still down on where you were in the election. The simplest way of keeping people, fixing the youth unemployment problem is not have that stupid jobs tax that they've done. And they went disproportionately too high on the national minimum wage. So what you tend to get, Mike, is people will, employers will think that's 16, 17, 18-year-old. They haven't got a lot of experience. They're straight out of school or they're just finishing college. I tell you what we'll do. We'll give them a job. They haven't got the experience, but we'll train them up a little bit. So you pay them a bit less for doing that, gives them a bit of a job on the ladder. But they put the national minimum wage up disproportionately higher for the youngest people, the 16, 17-year-olds. That what that meant is that if you're a company thinking, actually, it's going to cost me more now than they would have said a year ago, so I want to employ them. So to say, yeah, let's try and get 50,000 back into work, I don't see in the press statements the 77,000 that they've lost.
No.
And the quickest way to fix it, Mike, is to not lose them in the first place.
Well, exactly. And also, they've got this wrong-headed approach, haven't they, to business, where because they don't know anything about business, they think that the way to kind of make business work is to subsidise the companies so that they can hire people who don't know how to do anything. It's completely and utterly bonkers. What they should be doing is lowering the capital cost of actually running a company, lowering the national insurance, lowering income tax so that they can afford to pay people a bit more money, so that they can afford to hire more people, so they can grow their business. But you're not going to get growth in any business if all you're getting is subsidies from the government so that you employ some people that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to employ. It's mad.
Yeah, and it costs us money as well. So when you give a subsidy, you take money in tax and then you give it back. But then you need a civil servant or somebody to actually work out who's going to get it. So then there's the cost of the civil servant in terms of doing that. So ultimately, yeah, maybe the more sensible solution was not to mess around and play around with the national minimum wage rates, just increase them a little bit, with inflation, but not disproportionately amount. And then why not perhaps have there's no national insurance or of lower tax on employing these 16 to 24 hours. So rather than you pay us money and we give you a little bit back in subsidy, we just simplify the whole system. But nobody seems clever enough to do that, Mike. It just,
No.
You've got to get these youngsters in. And if the government can get them into work, because the important thing on this is the massive impact. When you're not working and you're young, the longer that goes, it impacts on your mental health, Mike. And what have we seen as well over the last 5 or 6 years, since the pandemic in particular, number of young people claiming personal independence payments for anxiety has gone through the roof as well. So the government's paying people because
I think I saw the figure it's increased by something like 76% in the last few years. And I was watching Pat McFadden again at the weekend, and he was saying, oh yeah, we're going to kind of crack down on that. But of course, they won't, because every time they try and crack down on people who say they're suffering from anxiety or try and crack down on welfare payments, the backbenchers all go into some kind of revolt and they say, you're not doing that. And so they won't, they're kind of stuck in no man's land.
We're kind of in this doom loop, Mike, because if you want to cut welfare payments, which is what we're talking about, the backbenchers won't allow them. So that's why they put this 26 billion tax hikes. The jobs tax then means that the young person can't get on the job ladder. That makes more people have anxiety. They go to the NHS then to try and get seen, and they're like, it's a 2 or 3 year. It's a 2 or 3 year kind of queue for you to be seen on any of this. So we're just going on in this circle of doom loop. And then every time you turn the telly on, you get Reeves and Starmer telling you more of the same. And I can see why young people are getting anxiety, Mike, because every time I see Rachel Reeves open her mouth, my anxiety goes through the roof as well.
Exactly right. I think we're all going to end up in the loony bin at this rate because they'll be driving us all insane. But this is the thing. I was looking at Twitter the other day, and there was a woman who tweeted out this time last year, she's a pub landlady, and she won Pub of the Year in this competition, and everything was rosy in the garden. And this year, she says, we can't sleep, we can't eat. We're worried we might have to close the business down. We can't afford to employ anyone. We're not making any money. We're getting hammered on taxes and on national insurance. And that's the reality in the hospitality business, at least. Sacha Lord, who talks a lot about this up in Manchester, nighttime economy guy, he's talking about hundreds and hundreds of businesses in this country just going bust in this year alone, which are employing young people, hospitality businesses, where you get a kid in to be a waiter, to be a bartender, to be running a cloakroom, anything. It's all gone.
And hospitality is kind of the lifeline for a lot of people. So it's just the jobs, but also people, we go to work and we want to go out and enjoy ourselves, and that's what the hospitality sector is. But because there's less money in people's pockets because of the taxes going up, they're not going up. It's costing more to employ these people in hospitality, so you need to cut a few people back. And you've got another vicious doom loop here, Mike, a vicious circle where hospitality's cutting back because we're not going out as much because there's less money in our pockets. They're employing fewer people. That makes it even worse in terms of the economic growth. So ultimately, Mike, the hospitality sector is being decimated. And it's not hard to fix it, is it? It's exactly what you've just said. Lower taxes. I don't think Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer ever used the term lower taxes.
No.
We can't keep going up. And what they announced in the budget, Mike, we're going to be, the share of GDP in terms of tax is going to be going to keep going up. We were talking about it under the Tories that it's getting worse. And normally the Tories would be a tax-reducing kind of government, but they weren't. And I'll tell you one thing, Mike, where does this all stem back in terms of why we've got this borrowing challenge and things is, remember a few years ago, we were speaking quite regularly back in the past. Remember Sunak coming up in Downing Street saying, we've got this furlough scheme. We're going to pay you all to stay at home. Everybody thought, brilliant. But the reason our borrowing figures and all our taxes are going up now is because the government weren't giving us free money back in the day. They were borrowing
on their money, was it?
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I was never cock-a-hoop about it because I knew it was actually my money they were giving to people to stay at home when I was going to work every bleeding day. It wasn't really very easy. But listen, Jamie, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Let's remind ourselves, actually, and we'll see you again soon. Jamie Jenkins there, the official stats man for this very show, for the Mike Graham Show. He is our official statistician, and he's very, very good at it. Yeah, because I was going to say, we haven't really heard much from Rachel Reeves this week, so maybe we just remind ourselves of what she used to say about how she was going to run the economy. Have a look.
So, my promise to you is this. Labour will not put up your income tax, national insurance, or VAT.
Welcome back to the real home of common sense. It's the Mike Graham Show. You can find us, of course, on YouTube. Please like the channel and please subscribe to the channel. We've already hit over 100,000 subscribers in just 1 week, so we're delighted with that. And of course, we're building our studio. It's coming along very, very nicely. We're putting all the finishing touches to it, so we'll be coming to you live every single weekday morning very, very soon. We'll keep updating you exactly how well that is going. Meanwhile, we've also got plans for a special show which we're going to be putting out on the evening of Christmas Day. That's Christmas Day evening at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be Plank of the Year. Something that we've been doing for many, many years. This time, though, it's going to be on the Mike Graham Show, and it's also going to be on the Substack, themikegrahamshow.com. We might even have a few extras for you. So by all means, start sending in your nominations for Plank of the Year. Obviously, some of you might think there's only one real winner, and it has to be the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Or could it be Angela Rayner? Or could it be just the whole Labour government? Or could it be Harry and Meghan? They're usually up there. Here's another plank, though, that's going to get a last-minute entry. We want yours, so make sure you send them in to us. But how about this? Huw Edwards, right? The disgraced former BBC news presenter and paedophile. Let's not beat about the bush. That's what he is, right? He was found guilty of paedophile behaviour, paedophile activity. He's apparently making some kind of comeback. Nobody's quite sure what he's going to do, but he posted a picture of himself looking sort of broody or brooding, might say, a black and white picture where he's got a kind of a beard and a moustache and a slight smirk on his face, looking into the camera. It's very much a publicity shot. It's the kind of thing that people in this business do if they're trying to draw attention to themselves. I mean, in my view, Huw Edwards should never be in the public eye ever again. Some of the things he did were quite disgraceful. I know personally some of the people that he was in touch with and sending pictures to, as many of us do, after the fact. He, of course, went through a criminal trial process. He only got a suspended sentence. In my view, he should have been given some custodial time, but he didn't do that. And instead, he went back to his house in Dulwich, which is a very expensive part of South London. He's got a £4.75 million home there, which we basically paid for, because he's only ever worked for the BBC. Like so many people, this is why the BBC is such a weird and bizarre organisation, because so many of the people who work there have literally never worked anywhere else. They join up as soon as they leave university, they work there for 40 odd years, and they become institutionalised. John Simpson, the former sort of chief foreign correspondent, is the same. Keeps banging on about how great the BBC is and defends it every single time he gets a chance to do it. Tim Davie, who of course is now the outgoing head Director General of the BBC, who was finally forced out after a whole litany of problems created by Gary Lineker, created by the Gaza documentary, created by the way that the BBC has been slanted about everything to do with the conflict between Israel and Palestine, the anti-Semitism, the continued and utter kind of crucifixion of anything right-wing. We saw just last week in Question Time, I don't know how many of you still watch that show, that they managed to somehow plant 2 illegal migrants in the audience who then was allowed to speak and were given a microphone to basically say why we shouldn't leave the ECHR and why they deserve to live here, even though they'd been rejected from all sorts of other countries in Europe before getting here. Nobody believes a word that the BBC says anymore. They are the least trusted news organisation in Britain. The people who support it keep telling us that around the world they have a very good reputation. Well, not anymore, they don't. But what about this? Huw Edwards, right, is now being talked about as possibly about to make some kind of audacious return to the public eye, right? Apparently, he's been trying to sell his 6-bedroom house, a very, very very nice property in this very affluent place called Dulwich Village. He's been trying to sell it for more than a year, right, for 4.75 million. But obviously, that's quite a lot of money. And there's an awful lot of people who at the moment don't want to pay the stamp duty thanks to this completely useless government on something like that because they've raised it to such a high extent. Then he slashed the price, apparently, by 250,000. Still didn't sell. Then he slashed the price by 500,000. And then he knocked 750,000 off. So it was only a bargain price of 4 million. But apparently it still wouldn't move and it still hasn't sold. And so now they've taken it off the market, right? And so what is now being said is that Huw Edwards is actually investing perhaps in something more surprising, his own reinvention. Now, this is a guy who's living high on the hog still because he's got a BBC pension, which is hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, which again, we've paid for. Tim Davie, as I said, the man who's now resigned as the Director General of the BBC, when he was last asked about the pension money and also an amount of money which Huw Edwards got while he was on sort of suspended leave, if you like, which he's supposed to return, he still, as far as we know, hasn't returned it. And it's around about 300,000 quid. And when Tim Davie was asked about it, he said, well, before a select committee, well, we have asked for it back. And they said, well, what if he doesn't give it to you back? What are you going to do then? And he didn't seem to have an answer for that. I suggested at the time to sort of send the boys round. Not those kind of boys, obviously, but, you know, the guys that are going to collect the money and just say to him, you owe us 300 grand, mate, 300 big ones. And if you don't pay it, something might happen. That's the only way to get money out of these people. You know, he has ripped off the country. He has behaved disgracefully. I mean, this is a guy who was actually texting teenage boys while he was in the middle of reading the news, right? Making all sorts of lewd offers to them, promising things to them, sending pictures, asking for pictures. I mean, the man's disgusting. He shouldn't be anywhere near the public eye. And if anybody in their right mind thinks that it's a good idea to bring Huw Edwards back to do anything, I'm afraid they shouldn't be in a job either. God knows. Who wants to see this guy? He should disappear and never be seen again. It's just ridiculous. Only in Britain could this kind of thing go on. You know, he should be sent off to some monastery somewhere where nobody ever hears from him again. Now, just when you thought things couldn't get any more bizarre, you know, we've got the worst government in the history of the world, right, running the place into the ground. You've got people going absolutely insane because they can't get anything done and nothing works. Guess what's happened now? Some bananas have washed up on the south coast. And not just bananas, some plantains and a few avocados as well. Apparently there was a bit of a storm over the weekend around the Isle of Wight. And there's a ship called the Baltic Clipper, which was obviously coming from, I guess, the Caribbean, heading to Southampton, I think. Anyway, 18 steel containers of bananas, plantain and avocados tumbled off the boat and ended up in the sea and have now washed up in Sussex on beaches, right? There's pictures of kids picking up bunches and bunches of bananas. But guess what? Of course, you would know that there'll have to be some official interaction going on. And the officials have come out and said, oh no, you can't be touching those. You can't be taking those home. Apparently they're trying to say that it's illegal to do anything with any of this stuff apart from report it to the local authorities and have them come and pick it up. There was a cruise ship which was already detained, which couldn't move anywhere because of all this stuff floating around. A cordon's been put in place by the police, fire and rescue involved, local coast guards as well. And of course, typical of Britain, you've now got more regulations around the bananas and more people policing the bananas than are actually policing the high seas. Because you might have noticed there's a few other things coming over and landing on beaches here as well. That would be the illegal migrants. They don't seem to be doing much about that. But bananas, no chance. You can't get through. We'll be collecting them and presumably having some kind of ritual burning. So that if you smell the smell of burning plantains and bananas anytime soon, you know what it's for. That's the Mike Graham Show for today, but look out on our Substack, themikegrahamshow.com, for extra content, all sorts of other things going on there as well. Announcements about Plank of the Year and everything else. Don't forget to like the channel on YouTube and please subscribe to it and keep getting those numbers up. And we'll see you at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.